Hello everyone and happy Earth Day. Welcome to our National Geographic Explorer series with the Northern Ireland Science Festival and the British Council. The NI Science Festival and National Geographic Society have teamed up to bring you this series of talks with prominent explorers to talk to us about their inspiring fields of research, some adventure stories, and to tell us about their career to date. And this event is supported by the Department of Education and the British Council Northern Ireland, and is part of the British Council's global programme #Climate Connection, which is going to take place at the 2021 UN Climate Change Conference, which is taking place in Glasgow this year. So I'm so delighted for all of you to join us. My name is Mark Langtry. I'm a physicist, a science presenter, and former professional footballer, and the head of science and sport here at Explorium in Dublin. And I'm super excited and really looking forward to this talk today, which is live, by the way. So thank you for joining us live. And because it's live, you all have a great opportunity to ask some questions, which you can do so in the Q&A. So make sure if you have a question, now is your time to ask it. So we will have some time at the end where we'll get through as many questions as possible. So let's kick it off. I'm super excited to introduce you to a marine biologist with a long-held interest in marine and tropical marine biodiversity and conservation, which I can't wait to hear all about and to hear the different stories. She studies how the sea adapts to different changes in the environment, is an assistant professor in tropical marine biodiversity in Wageningen University in the Netherlands. A huge welcome, Lisa Becking. Hi, Lisa.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm so excited.
I am super excited as well. And I know everyone watching will be too, and there'll be lots of questions coming in. I already, Lisa, have some of my own. I'm super excited to hear all about your research. How are you, first of all?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. I mean, part of me is wishing that I was in the sea, but right now I'm just sort of in a virtual sea.
Wait, you're not in the sea. I assumed you were in the ocean, Lisa.
Oh, I should have kept my mouth. Yes. Yeah. No, unfortunately. I'm in Holland.
Those fish behind you are very well behaved, I can see as well. Very, very calm. They know how to participate in a Zoom webinar at this stage.
Indeed. Yes. It's been a year now. They know.
So Lisa, we'll start off where I'll give the floor to you, and you can have 10-15 minutes to talk to us about your work and to show us your presentation, and then we'll come back together and we'll go through some questions and answers and have a nice old chat. So over to you, Lisa.
Brilliant. Okay, I will get my screen up. There we are. Does everyone see this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Lovely. Oh yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, so thanks a lot for having me. And yeah, so I study life in the sea, which means that I'm a marine biologist, and my adventures in marine biology all started here in this bay in Menorca, an island in Spain. Pardon me, I'm just going to go back. That person that you see there swimming, that's my mom. And my mom gave me some goggles when I was about 2. And basically that opened up this world under the sea, because with those goggles, I could see all the different creatures and forms and animals that lived in the sea. And I would spend every summer just trying to figure out who lives under the water. Who are they? What are their names? How many of them are there? And I would just, be counting species and looking at what's there. And that's still my job. I still pretty much count species and try to see what species are there and identify them and describe them. And so what you see here is on the left, I'm in the coral reef. All that down below are corals. And on the right, all that color that you see there, those are all sponges. And what I'm doing there is I'm actually writing underwater. So we have this paper, and it's made of plastic, and you can write with an actual pencil, and you can just write underwater. And that's how I sort of write down what's there and what's all over the place. And sometimes I'm lucky enough to go in a dive boat, in a submarine. And with the submarine, we went down to 200 meters. This was in Bonaire in the Caribbean. And there we found a whole bunch of sponges. And we were able to, and we found a whole bunch of sponges that didn't have a name yet. And so we studied them and we gave them a name. Now, there are actually quite a lot of species in the sea. And I have a question for you. And I think, Sarah or Chris, do you have the Zoom poll? Otherwise, I'm just going to put it out there and then people can put it in the chat. So my question to you guys is, how many species do you think there are in the sea? And we're not counting microbes here, because with microbes, there are just gazillions. And I'm going to give you a bit of a tip. It's, oh, great. There's the poll is out there. So it's, what do you think? You think it's about 500,000? You think it's 1 to 2 million? You think it's about 3 to 5 million? Or just over 10 million? I'm going to give you a little bit more time to answer. I'm seeing some different answers. Okay, there's some people we're already spreading through different ones. Well, Mark, what do you say?
I'm just going to go for the biggest number out there.
So we say.
With D.
Yeah. All right. I'm actually gonna give you an answer that might be a bit disappointing, because the actual answer is we don't know.
Oh,
No, so there's so much sea out there that still has not been really completely documented and has not been completely surveyed, and we don't really know. So the estimates right now is that it's, hold on, I gotta go back to this there, that it's 1 to 2 million. But, you know, as we learn more, that might change. And that's kind of what I've found kind of interesting while I've been studying the sea, is how much is still undocumented, how much is still left to be explored. There's so much out there that's still left to be explored. And I really do hope that some of you, when you grow up, will join us in those explorations and find out what all is there. So for example, this is a map from an expedition that I used when I went to Papua New Guinea, and this is a country just above Australia. And I was preparing for this trip, and I got maps and everything. And then I bought this map. And if you look well at the map, you see that a whole bunch of area, it says unsurveyed. So it's uncharted waters. And there's actually a lot of the sea that is still not really been clearly documented. And a lot of the maps still aren't correct. And it's kind of crazy if you think about it, because we all have phones, right? And on our phones, we have all the maps and everything's very exact. But there's a lot of part of the world where that's not the case. And there's a lot of part of the sea where that's not the case. Now, I study, I'm interested in species and how species, why some areas have lots of species and some areas don't have that many species, and why some species come together, how they come together and why they stay together. And a lot of researchers have studied these kinds of questions using islands, because islands are sort of these nice areas where you really know where it begins and where it ends and how old they are. But yeah, islands are great if you're interested in land species, but I'm interested in the sea. So I was interested in looking for inside out islands, and I found them. Yeah, here we go. I found them here. They're islands of sea. They're also called marine lakes. So they're little bits of sea that are surrounded by land. And we study them to see which species are there and under what circumstances and how they come together. And so when I started this work, I knew that there were some of these marine lakes, as they're called, in Indonesia. We knew that there were a number there, but we had an idea that there probably were more. But again, this area, a lot of these areas don't have very good maps. So we had to find sort of another way to find the lakes. And I ran into someone who likes to build scary airplanes. This airplane here, it's completely open, and it goes off. It's a water airplane, goes from the sea and goes up. And we flew all around that area. And I'm going to give you a video to give you a bit of a sense of what that was like. So here, I'm going to turn the sound up there. So we flew over this area, and then we could just go look and try to find the different lakes. And already here you see a couple of lakes, and you just sort of see this area. And what's nice here is if you have a good look, you don't see any buildings, right? You don't see anything built. So it's really remote, and it's very what we call pristine areas. It's very it's undamaged areas. And so we flew all over around there. And then this is sort of the kind of the area that we saw. And then we didn't find just one of these marine lakes. We found tons of them. So we found over 50 that hadn't been documented before. And so we made pictures and we made maps. And then we went inside of them and looked at what species were there. And here are a couple of species. They're nice and colorful, that I loved about the lakes. And so these are actually sponges. And another species that we ran into were jellyfish. Particularly this jellyfish, they're called golden jellyfish, or Mastichias papua. And again, not one, but many. So from the surface, this is what you see. It's all pink. They're all jellyfish. And if you go inside, there are lots of them. And I'm just gonna put the video on to give you a sense of what it's like to swim among all these jellyfish. Now, when I was a kid in Spain, I was kind of afraid of jellyfish because I'd been stung by jellyfish and it hurt. And I'm curious if any of you have ever been stung by a jellyfish. And so when I went here, I really thought, oh, that's a bit scary to go jump in a lake filled with jellyfish. But slowly I did, and it turned out they don't hurt. So you can swim through them, and they kind of ignore you. They just sometimes bump into you there. You swim around and you can see them. And you actually have a number of different jellyfish here. And because it's such a spectacular experience, for me, it was almost like I was jumping into a cartoon. It really seemed like this sort of, unreal experience. Because of that, a lot of tourists come there, and that's nice, but we just have to be part of our work. What we're also doing is trying to find out how many tourists can go there without harming the situation, harming the lakes, and what we can do to protect them. Because one of the problems is that actually a number of the lakes are also used as toilets. And so we actually gave them a name, Toy Lakes. And so this is something that we're working on and trying to make it clear to people that the toilets actually are quite a big problem. Actually, even some places where you might go on holidays, sometimes, when you go to the toilet, you flush the toilet and it disappears. You don't think about it, but sometimes it does actually end up in the sea, and it can be a problem. So that's something that we're also working on to help that and to help think about that. With that, I'm just gonna end with this critter here. And I was just curious, does anyone know what this is? I will give you one hint. It's an animal. I'd like to say thanks. I'm really looking forward to your questions.
Thank you so much, Lisa. I really think you're going to need more hints there. That was a crazy looking picture.
Right.
I'll keep an eye on the chat if anybody gets that extra bonus points. Cool picture. And thank you so much for sharing your work and adventures and stories. It looks absolutely incredible, Lisa, from everything from what you do, the imagery. I can just imagine how striking it is in that moment to take in such a beautiful environment. Can you talk to us just very briefly, before there's so much to talk about, but what feelings do you get when you find yourself in those situations when that is something so beautiful?
Well, with the for example, with the jellyfish lakes, so I'm a scientist, right? So I'm supposed to be very serious, and I'm supposed to go in these lakes and then just count. But what you say is so true. There, it is so beautiful and so also crazy that it's that you just get absorbed by it. And so what goes through me is really this sense of, well, how special it is to be able to see these things in person. But at the same time, I also really love making videos. and pictures, and to make certain that other people can also definitely see it. Because I think that's really fun of this time, that so many people can make pictures and videos and we can share it and we can get to know the sea a little better.
Awesome. We have some guesses at what that was. So
yes, I'm seeing some.
Oh, great. So we have sponge, we have an octopus, some sort of strange fish, a sea cucumber. Okay. You've kept us all in suspense here, Lisa.
Well, let me see. I don't think I see the correct answer yet. Should we otherwise wait? Let people.
Okay. We'll get some more guesses in. Okay. I love the way you're keeping us in suspense. I love it. So we talked there, Lisa, about how wonderful and amazing it is, even though you're there to work, that you can still really appreciate the beautiful environment you're in. So if we go back to that beautiful picture in Menorca, what was the spark when you were younger that you said, this is something that I want to know more about, and you began then your journey to where you are today?
Well, I mean, the true spark was really the goggles that my mom gave me, and giving the chance to learn to swim very young, and being able to do that and to see. Because I think that's for a lot of us, right? I mean, once you see how beautiful the nature is, and that can be in your park, in your garden, that can be all over. When you really see it, and you want to know more. So for me, it was seeing the different shapes and forms and wanting to know, gosh, what species? Well, I guess I was too young at that point. I didn't think species, but I did think, what's its name? So that's sort of where it went.
Awesome. I'm going to jump straight in here with a question. What is your favorite marine species? I've seen this coming up. I was like, okay, interesting. What would you say is your favorite marine species?
Oh, I love so many of them. I mean, like the jellyfish are my best friends right now. But I mean, gosh, I also like sea turtles. I've also worked with sea turtles a fair amount, because the way they swim underwater is magnificent. And you know what other animal I love is are manta rays. So these are very large animals, and they basically have these wings underwater, and they have a very large mouth, but they're not dangerous. They just suck in plankton and the little animals in the sea, and they basically like vacuum clean the sea, and they're beautiful. They're wonderful to see. Yeah.
What would you say is the strangest thing you found down in the ocean?
So there's this jellyfish that when it gets a bit stressed, or if it's unhappy, it actually gets small again, and it kind of goes back in time. So it kind of it can, so you have the jellyfish, and then it will go back and it will go attach itself onto the ground, and will wait until it gets until the situation is better, and then it will grow again. So some people say that this jellyfish is immortal, because it can so we start out as a baby, and then we grow up to an adult, and this jellyfish can go from an adult back to a baby, and then back to an adult, and then back to a baby. It's kind of spectacular.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is absolutely spectacular. I just want to give a quick shout out to the schools who are joining us. We have Assumption Grammar, who are back for more. We've Strathern Grange, and a lot of homeschoolers as well, because I can see lots of questions coming in for you, Lisa. Some really awesome ones. So I'm looking forward to getting through some of them as well. But we'll chat a little bit, I suppose, then about how you began your professional career. So you have this amazing passion. You've got the goggles. You're interested in knowing what's down there. What steps did you take then in your professional career, and then to become a National Geographic explorer?
Yeah, so I mean, I think well, after high school, I went to university and I studied biology, and then went on and got my PhD in marine biology, and then went on. But I think the key thing there is that I kind of made my choices based on really where my passion and where my interest lay. So I was always extremely interested in the sea. So I just made certain that I took all the classes I could take about the sea, and in the summers I would do internships with whatever possible in the sea. And if I give any tips, I would say what's key is just, stay curious and keep observing, and then you'll see what you like, and then you'll learn more, and we'll go on. Yeah.
I think that's a really lovely message, Lisa, that we always try to encourage is to follow things you're interested in and passionate about. For any students wondering what career maybe they possibly want to take, the best piece of advice is to always follow things you're interested in, things that excite you, things you're curious about, and to follow those passions, not knowing exactly where it may lead, but knowing that if you're following your passions, it can only lead to a wonderful place, like we've seen with yourself, Lisa. And one of the most striking images from your presentation, I just thought that submarine picture was unbelievably cool. Like unbelievably cool. And we'll get to the airplane in a second as well, but can you just talk to us a little bit about the submarine? What's it like in there?
Unreal. Yeah, no. Well, but actually, going, even before the submarine, it's kind of cool because you have to prepare everything exactly, and you even get special socks. So you have to wear these special socks before you can go in the submarine, and then you climb in, and it's quite you sort of have a ladder going down, and then you sort of have to jump. You go in, and then so you there's one big window up front, and then there are a few windows on the side. And what's amazing in the sea is the first 40 meters, there's still sunlight from up above, and you can sort of still see. But at a certain point, you keep going down, and it gets really dark. And then there are these big lights, and then fish come towards the lights, and then you go down, and you just see everything sort of becoming more alien, basically. And yeah, so that's the side from looking. And inside, yeah, it is cramped. So you're there with 5 people, and you better like each other because you're quite close to each other. Yeah.
It looked absolutely awesome. And of course, like you said, to get to the submarine, you got to go out on a ship. And Lisa, I've read some of your blogs, which I think you amazingly described the experience. It sounds quite funny, to be honest, on the ships out there with the rocking, the plates flying everywhere. Can you tell us a little bit about life on the ship?
Yes, well, life on the ship is not still, right? It's not static. It's always moving. So pretty much everything you do, from putting your toothbrush by your, in the bathroom to having your cup on the table, you have to think that at any moment the ship could move. So you get really good at thinking about how you can sort of do things. I keep things in my, And so a lot of the cabinets, they all have magnets. So you actually put everything on the magnets on there. And so it's basically keeping in mind that there's always wind and there's always things moving. And actually you always have to keep you're always standing with your legs apart because you're kind of trying to stand still. So one area where we work is in Saba Bank, that's in the Caribbean, and there the waves get pretty high. And yes, sometimes all our drinks and food just end up on the floor.
A pretty good excuse, Lisa, if you're a kind of messy person, just like, oh, the sea was so rough today. Just a great excuse when you're just stuck is absolutely everywhere.
Yes. Yeah, I tried using that on land, but it didn't work.
So you're on the ship and you're preparing for your dive. And I can see from our Q&A, there's a large interest in the dive and the scuba dive. So can you talk to us a bit about the preparation for it, and maybe going down from the chaos above into the calm beneath?
Yeah. So yeah, well, the ship is moving, but at the same time, we have to be really careful, right? Because we have to get all our equipment together. So we have our dive equipment, which, yeah, there are many components, but there's the important part that you put in your mouth that's connected to the tank that has the air, and then there's this sort of vest you put on, and that's actually what the tank is connected to, and it also, you can put the air in there so that you float at the surface. And then we have a bunch of we have our big fins, and we have our computer that tells us how deep we can go and how long we can go. And so it's all very much getting ready. And then because the waves are pretty high, you really have to time when you can jump from the ship. And there typically is someone there that's very strict, and he then tells us, like, 1, 2, 3, go. And then you jump in the water, and then it's quiet. So then you just sort of float and you drift down, and then you see fish like this. And yeah, but what's really important though with diving is that you are always really aware of your equipment, that you make certain that it's clean and that it's working, and that's, yeah, double checking and checking your partners. You always dive together with 2 people, with what they're called your buddy. Yeah. So and then if you make certain you do that, it's also very safe. Yeah.
Cool. And we have a question coming in here that, did you learn to scuba dive when you were learning to be a marine biologist, or is that something you learned beforehand?
It is actually something I learned beforehand. Yeah.
Ah,
When I was about 15, I learned to dive. So I kind of learned to snorkel. So with the snorkel, I learned to do that when I was, yeah, quite young, so around 3. And I just always felt very comfortable underwater. And at a certain point, I realized that there was such a thing as diving, and so I decided to go to learn that. Yeah.
okay, great. And was there any, you said you studied biology in school, and then you went to study for a PhD. Were there any particular subjects that you'd recommend our students or our viewers watching who'd love to follow in a similar career or path yourself? Was there any kind of tips or things you'd advise them to study, or to even to learn and read in their spare time?
Yeah, so definitely with studying, I mean, it's biology, and but also physics and chemistry and geography are actually really good topics. Um, but to be honest, I actually also think it's very good to focus on topics that may not be exactly in that line, but that's still, because they sort of open your mind a bit. So things like, I mean, I studied literature as well and art, because I think actually, if that's something that interests you, because I think actually by focusing is great, but sometimes also sort of seeing things in a different way helps your science as well. So I actually sometimes also work with artists, because they see the fish slightly differently than I do. Yeah.
I think that's
Um,
a super point, and something as a physicist we come across in physics all the time, is this the power of using analogy. And it's great, the more diverse and distant the analogy from your current area of research, the better chance you have at finding similar links and cross-disciplinary to find a great answer. So having professional diversity is a great way to find the answers that may lie outside your specific domain. Um,
yeah.
really great advice. So we have a great question coming in here, and it's I'm sure we've all been traveling less in the past year, and is there anywhere you would travel at the moment? Where would be your favorite place to go?
I think back to Indonesia, I gotta say. So I do a lot of my research in Indonesia, and in particular in the eastern part, which is called West Papua, Raja Ampat. In that area, that's the area where you saw the plane.
Mhm.
Yeah, I can't wait to get back there. Yeah,
Oh, it
but
sounds amazing.
you know what? I mean, every sea just amazing. So, I mean, the sea right here in the Netherlands, or right there in Northern Ireland, I mean, there is so much life and diversity there. So it's not only coral reefs. I mean, every sea has many things that you can learn and find. So, I mean, I'm just happy to be able to go in any water right now. It's just a little cold still here.
Oh, it's colder here. I tell you,
Yeah,
I'll
that's
tell you
true.
that. So, can you tell us a little bit about those marine lakes? You're arriving to some beautiful pictures, beautiful scenery, sometimes knowing that you will be the first people to observe these and to possibly find new species. Can you tell us about that feeling you get just as you arrive at a marine lake?
Well, there is that whole trip towards it as well, which sort of is part of that. Because what we always do is first, there are not many villages there, but there are few. We always go to the village and we have tea with the head of the village, and sort of ask, you know, what's around and things, and then we go out together with various people from the area, and it's always a bit of a trek. So because they're inland, so you really have to climb up and then climb down with your dive gear on. So by the time you get up to the top, you're pretty sweaty, pretty muddy, pretty tired, and then to actually see that there is a lake is just amazing. Yeah, what do you feel? I mean, it's that sense of amazement again and again that there just is still so much left to discover. And then the curiosity of what will be in there. Will there be jellyfish? Will there be crazy red shrimp? Will there be what will be in there? And that's then what gets us down. Yeah.
What's super exciting is that for our viewers watching, there is so much still to be discovered. So many of you guys watching will be our future explorers, and there is so much there, so much mystery, so much new information to discover, and I find that super exciting as well. I'm going to go to some questions here at the moment. You got a lovely one coming in. That what research would you really love to conduct?
Well, being a scientist, I then have to ask which question, which question do you want to answer, right? Because how we often work is that we have a question, and then from there we figure out what methods do we need to be able to answer those questions. But yeah, so one of the things that I'm very interested in is how quickly animals in the sea can adapt to the changes that there are. So on the one hand, changes that are just natural changes, but we also, as humans, we have a lot of influence on the sea. And I'm very curious at how quickly corals or other animals can adapt. And one way of doing that is through working with genetics. So by looking at the DNA and looking at how quickly that changes. And another way is with what's called sediment cores. And actually with that, you basically dig up a bunch of earth and from the bottom of the sea, and then you can see how the sea changed over time. So it's kind of like a history book of the sea diversity. Yeah, so those are the two things right now.
Awesome. And I think a great question coming in here from Claire McNulty, that do you see different species in different lakes, or are they interconnected?
So yeah, that's a great question. So actually, because the lakes are really isolated, we see species there that we don't find anywhere else. So that's what we call endemic. So these are species that are just only in these lakes and nowhere else. And there are a couple of sponges like that, and as well as some fish. And so we know that they're related to some of the species outside. But it's quite amazing to see that. So part of what we're doing is also working with people who can also describe these species and give them a name.
Awesome. I want to give a mention to Milo, who is 10, who wants to know, what is the weirdest animal you've seen because he likes goblin sharks.
Oh, wow. Yeah. 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 I also love what are called Wobegon sharks. So these sharks are, yeah, I mean, they're just hard to believe. So these sharks are really flat, and they have these. They sort of have like a beard, but also like the beard goes over their eyes, and I don't even know how to describe them well. You guys got to just look it up. Wobegon sharks, and they're really cute because they just sort of hide out in sort of little sort of little caves, and then at first you won't see them, and then suddenly you see these eyes looking at you, and they're just sort of hanging there. I guess that's one of the weirder ones. Yeah,
Yeah,
there are
I'll
many
accept
weird
that.
ones out there. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And Lisa, obviously you've had a very adventurous career, and as an explorer, you get to do some amazing things. Are there any particular challenges or obstacles you've overcome you think our audience can connect with if they desire to follow the path of an explorer?
Yeah, I mean, look, something that I've run into, and I think a lot of people run into that, is that you can sometimes feel like when you're in a new place or a new group, or you're slightly different than the whole group, that you can sort of feel like a little bit insecure, right? That you sort of feel like, gosh, everyone knows, has a good idea of what's going on, and I don't, and maybe what I'm thinking is not, really interesting, or maybe I'm not asking the right questions, or sometimes you, particularly when you're different from the most of the group. So in my case, like I've had quite often that I'll be the only woman, and so sometimes you can feel a little, yeah, like your ideas maybe don't matter as much. And what I've just found that over time is that actually, yes, you are different, and that's okay. That's actually great, because having these different ideas and different approaches is actually going to help us find solutions for a lot of things. And so what I'd like to give to people is really, yeah, I mean, it's okay to be different. It's actually really great, and just try to own it as much as you can. Yeah, that's one of the things I definitely have found, and it always sort of stays, right? Yeah,
Absolutely. And it's really our differences really are our strengths.
absolutely.
It would be boring if we all thought the same thing. We wouldn't solve anything out. It's very important to have different ideas, different points of view. That's how science works. So that's a really lovely message, Lisa, as well. And I know from your presentation, collaboration seems like a huge part of your work, not only with other scientists or engineers or marine biologists, but with the local people who live in the places you get to visit.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. So, yeah, no, so I work with people on different levels. So, yeah, I work together with the universities, for example, in Indonesia. So with different lecturers, but also students. And I really try to get a lot of students from the different areas to work in my lab. So to come over to Holland for a while and work with us. But also with the fishermen and the village heads. And I guess the key thing here is that it's not just me wanting to do some some research, but that it's really something that we're doing together, and that we're, again, we were talking about the questions, like that the questions we ask are also the questions that many different people are interested in. So yeah, and so yeah, so one of the things that we're starting to do now, and particularly, yeah, because of COVID, because we're doing so much online now, what we're doing is making more video clips with information in different languages about different things of the sea, as well as protection, and share that with the different groups that we work with.
Really awesome. And obviously we've seen the beautiful imagery and the beautiful places you get to visit. And an important topic to land on is that although the images you have are very, very beautiful, it's not always as peaceful as it seems. We know that climate change is having a huge impact on marine ecosystems and the environment. Can you talk to us a little bit about how that impacts the marine ecosystem?
Yeah, well, you're right. I mean, that's absolutely true. So coral reefs definitely are having a very tough time, and I think probably a lot of people have seen various news reports about that. And what we see is that they're under stress from sort of large processes, from global problems such as climate change, which causes the main issue there is really that the temperature increases, and that really harms the corals and many other organisms. But also local problems. So things like overfishing and pollution, or sort of runoff from land and actually toilets. But what gives me kind of hope, though, is that we are seeing more and more research that shows that if you can reduce the local problems and really tackle those, so really take them away or make them less, you can make the coral reefs and other systems stronger or more resilient towards climate change. It's not the only answer, but we do see that if you really, like for example, on these small islands, if they really focus on reducing the local problems, you really can make the reefs stronger. So that means that local management and local policies really make a big difference, and local actions. Yeah.
And it's also amazing that you can then communicate your findings with local people, with people back in the Netherlands and around the world to make sure that everyone is aware of these issues, as the best way to address them is to at least know what's happening as well. And you also mentioned that something that has a huge impact is the increasing amount of tourism in these what was relatively remote areas.
Yeah. Yeah, tourism. So we've all been tourists, right? I mean, probably everyone here has been tourists somewhere, and that's great, because I think it's great because when we see ecosystems, we also get to love them, and we want to protect them. But what's key, though, is that we just want to make certain that when we go on holiday, that we try to do as little harm as possible. And there are some problems with tourism in that, particularly when like in Spain or in some of or in other places in the Mediterranean, or maybe actually even in maybe even in Northern Ireland. Often were places that people that want to go to the sea, they want to be in hotels right by the coast. And the problem with that is that when you're building on the coast, all kinds of sand and sediment and all kinds of stuff gets washed into the sea, and that's a bit of a problem. And the other issue, and we don't think about that, is our toilets. So when we go to the toilet, it just flushes away. We don't have to think about it. But on many of these particularly remote areas, and particularly tropical islands, there actually isn't a sewage system or water treatment system. And so unfortunately, things just go straight into the sea. And that's actually also not so healthy it's not just for the reefs, but also for people. It's not so healthy. So that's something that I'm hoping through our work and other people's work, we can kind of make people a bit more aware and ask questions. So ask the hotel, like, gosh, what do you do? To maybe make some change there.
And a great question coming in. Are you hopeful and optimistic for the oceans?
Yes. That does not mean, there's work to do.
Mm-hmm.
And we need to be careful. But I am hopeful and optimistic. And I also think we have to be, quite frankly, because a lot of the fact that we can breathe is partly because of the sea, because about 50% of the oxygen is produced by marine organisms. And there are many other things that the sea sort of organizes and gives for us that makes our life quite pleasant. So I think we also have to be careful and optimistic about the sea to make certain that, our life is also quite pleasant. Yeah.
Awesome. And what is next for you, Lisa? Obviously, COVID has probably have an impact on travel for you, and maybe you've had to pivot for your research, but what is next? What does the future hold?
Well, the topic that I'm incredibly interested in is tourism and nature conservation. That area I really, really want to work on further. So the tourism brings lots of positive possibilities, funding, protection, but it also has some problems. And working on that balance, that's something that I'm really interested in. And so I've during COVID times, I've gathered together all these different people that were doing nothing but sit behind their computers. So it was easy to find them. So I have an economist. I actually have a physicist. And we have all kinds of people from NGOs that are working together to tackle this. Yeah.
Awesome. And we have a great question here from Kieran McManus that what is the one thing you would suggest to our young people to help preserve creatures in the sea?
Well, I mean, what you can do as a kid, as a young person, is observe and look and learn and be curious, because I think if all of us really, get to know the sea, and it doesn't matter which sea, right? It's any part of the sea, and get to know the species in there and understand them. I think that's going to help us later on, because you'll consider it later on when you become a manager of some big company or whatever. I mean, you may still think about the sea when you enjoyed it. Yeah.
Absolutely awesome. And for anyone watching who would possibly like to take the next steps to becoming an explorer, because that is something pretty awesome, Lisa. And I know we are all explorers, whether we explore our own back gardens or we go off and explore the marine lakes in Indonesia. What kind of advice would you give to a young audience who would also like to become a National Geographic explorer?
I'm going to say it again. Stay curious. Keep observing. Try to find out what the species are around you. Well, that's as a biologist, but explore your backyard. Like, that's where it starts, right? So yeah, I would stay curious, keep asking questions, and follow your passion.
Awesome, Lisa. It's been incredible to hear about your journey and your work, and firstly, how interesting it is, but how important it is for the global environment and for our future as well. So, and it's great to see the work that yourself and your team do. Incredibly inspiring, hugely adventurous, and I'm sure will inspire any of our young viewers as well to follow their dreams and to hopefully make an impact and a positive impact on the world and our environment. Because like you said, we do need to act. We are very positive, but now is the time for action for sure. And our younger viewers will be a huge part of that action as well. And we've had some awesome questions coming in. So a massive shout out as well, again, to Assumption Grammar, Strathern Grange, and all the homeschoolers for sending in some amazing questions. I hope you've been inspired into action to pursue your dreams or whatever they may be. And Lisa, I'd like to really again thank you for taking the time to join us and share your adventure and stories with us. And I really look forward to following your career and the work that you'll do in the future too.
Thank you so much. This was really so much fun, and I loved the questions. I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to see which explorers come out from this. Yeah.
As am I. Yeah. So thank you to all of you for joining us for the National Geographic Earth Day series. And once again, thank you again to Lisa, and a huge thank you to the Northern Ireland Science Festival, the British Council, and National Geographic Society. And once again, this event is supported by the British Council and the Department of Education, and as part of the British Council's global program, #The Climate Connection, which again will take place in 2021 this year in Glasgow, the UN Climate Change Conference. So thank you all again for joining us. Thanks for the wonderful questions. And thank you again to Lisa. And I hope all of you keep exploring.